Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is all about 6 questions to ask each other to emotionally connect. And this can happen on a date or at the end of the day.
Yes, well, the thing is, the quality of your conversation comes from the quality of your questions.
Ooh.
And I know I didn't used to be a great question asker. You know, it was kind of the same old, how are you? How was your day? How'd that meeting go? Right? Like I didn't even know what to ask. And I think that for a lot of us, we didn't ever really read a book or learn about how do you ask great questions. But that really is where the depth of your conversation comes from.
Yeah, it is actually a skill. And, you know, for some people, maybe they just talk a lot. So which is great. Sharing with your partner is a positive thing. But also, you need that sense of being curious and being engaged and wanting to know about the other person, which comes from questions.
Yes, and we know that most of you fall into one of 4 places. One, you're together all the time. Maybe both of you work from home, or, you know, we all came out of about a year and a half of being together a lot more than you're used to. And when you're around each other all the time, it can be easier to kind of get on autopilot, to get comfortable, almost just kind of be like, oh, there you are. And your conversations get a little bit lazier, I guess
we've talked about intention. You know, over some time, when you do literally anything in life, the intention that you have, and with that, your attention starts to decrease. And whenever you do that, you just start to remove some of your own energy and engagement in whatever that is. And when it happens with your partner, this is when you start to feel a little less emotionally connected, right?
Exactly. And your conversations are a little less juicy. So that's the first place. You're together all the time, which Aaron and I can connect with that one. It takes us to be very thoughtful, to not just get complacent. Because you guys, we work together. We live together. We sleep together.
We're not just talking about the last 2 years. We're talking about the last 7 years. It's 100% of the time.
Exactly. And so that's one place that you can fall in. The second would be that so many of your current conversations are about management. You're in a season of young kids, and this one's got soccer, and this one's got baseball, and then, we need to get you to your meeting. And right, it's like your life feels maybe a little overwhelming to you, and it feels like you're now just trying to manage life together. And that's where your conversations exist.
Yeah, and, you know, for some, you might run a business together, so that brings you, you know, more in touch each day. But just because you spend a lot of time together doesn't mean you feel that emotionally connected. Even to say this, we did a coaching call this past week. Well, we did many. But on one of them, and obviously we're not sharing names here, but they said that even when they're physically intimate together, they don't end up feeling that connected even afterward. So this is where all these points are where this topic is really coming from. And at the end of this, if you were just to take away noticing that if you're talking more about activities, or are you asking questions and sharing that get to experience?
Yeah.
And that's probably going to be the main thread here for today.
Yeah. One other place you could be before we get into some of the questions is that you've been together, you know, quote unquote, a long time, which for some of you could feel like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You know, we know some couples 30 plus years together. So whatever a long time is for you, you've been together a while. And yes, there's love. But like Aaron said earlier, you can easily get, with anything that you love, you can start to become more complacent or just on autopilot. And so those years together, you're just so, it's kind of like I know what you'd say. I feel like I already know how you'd answer the question. I already know that if we're at dinner and I say, how was your day? You're going to say, it was okay. And so you almost feel like you can predict each other's answers or how the conversation's going to go. And that doesn't lead to, again, this like juicy, deep conversation. And, you know, also great conversation And that emotional connection for a lot of people is what leads to opening up and desiring physical connection. And I know that sexual intimacy, physical connection is really important to a lot of people, and yet they don't feel it's happening in their relationship. For some, it's like, if I don't feel connected to you emotionally, I'm not desiring you as much physically. So it's like it's a win-win, having these meaningful conversations where you're connecting deeper then leads to like, wow, I feel so connected to you. I'm kind of checking you out. I kind of want to head to the bedroom with you.
And when that happens, and then you do face challenges, the challenges, which could be exactly the same, are going to feel less significant.
True.
That goes back to this principle of love tank, which is a part of our book. By the way, if you haven't got the Argument Hangover, what are you waiting for? So go to theargumenthangover.com specifically. You can find your favorite retailer. But why we want you to go there first is because after you purchase from the retailer you want to, come back, put your receipt number in, and we are still giving access for $200 worth of a conflict resolution course, as well as a debrief guide. There's another bonus training in there that we do that goes more into the Argument Hangover. So yeah, go ahead and grab your copy, theargumenthangover.com. And if you've gotten your copy, we would love a review. And reviews really help other people see it online, and it's an impact you can have in other couples' lives.
Absolutely. I want to go back to something you said, Aaron, about how the basis of your conversations should ideally be more about experience than activities. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I wanted to also say part of what I believe keeps one partner from being able to access this type of conversation is you're not really present to what's going on in your own experience. And when you don't have access to, what's this been like for me? And some of the questions we're going to go into, well, what's been challenging here? What am I reflecting on? Am I giving language? I've talked about this before too. For a lot of men, it's powerful to start to build a vocabulary around what your experience, what your emotions actually are. Because without that, you don't have the ability to share with a partner, right? So then their questions are just going to fall flat because some say, well, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's when the answers become like, fine, okay, right? And this conversation, right, we're going to give you questions to ask each other. And if the two of you are participating in this, also realize that you don't want to just give each other super short answers. You want to say more than it was okay, it was fine. You want to go deeper into that experience, which another word you could use for experience is how you feel. Connecting about your feelings, not just what you did or are doing. And I also want to add that this is so important for you to prioritize in your relationship. And what I mean is to create intentional space for meaningful conversations. We all desire partnership, love, union, and we don't think to ourselves when we're, looking to attract a partner, I'm really looking for someone that, we just kind of get to a place of coasting and we just, start to feel like we already know each other and it's, just kind of what a superficial connection. No, that's not what you hope for. You want connection. You want partnership. You want love. You want someone to know you. You want someone you can open up to, confide in, share your breakdowns and breakthroughs with. And so you want to create this intentional space for meaningful conversations. And we're not about excuses. So it doesn't matter if you have 6 kids. We know couples with 6 kids who prioritize time for their relationship and great conversations. It doesn't matter if you work long hours, you can find time if it's important to you. And so some examples would be, right, like scheduling date nights. And just being on the date doesn't mean you're having a great conversation. That's why we're going to give you these questions, because you got to be on the date and asking each other great questions. Or the other place outside of date nights is like in the evenings. And you want to, put your kids to bed early if you need to. That's been a huge thing with the couples we're coaching who have kids, is they've been kind of just putting their kids to bed and kind of letting their kids stay up as late as they want. And then they're not going into the bedroom to connect. They're both going into separate rooms on devices, and then
or
they're
in the
like,
same room on devices. Either way, you're not connecting.
Yeah. So you got to go into the room with the intention of let's be off our devices and let's have a meaningful conversation.
I thought this was really good from another session, actually, because when I see other people post about scheduling your date night, I'm like, blah. Oh my gosh. Like, this is the most obvious thing, or it's just been said so many times. And I just want to take this deeper because I just don't really care that much about dates because, like you said, you can be on a date and it is the same conversation. You're still talking about activities. It's not having you feel any more connected. So what we came up with, and another thing about that, when it seems like we need to schedule a date, what do you think of? Well, it needs to be outside the house. We have to plan something. We have to find a place for reservations. We have to schedule an activity. And so if you get in a week where you feel like you didn't have time to do that or you don't want to, then it doesn't happen. So what we said this week to a different couple was just block that time, and you could start with a particular day of the week and then schedule the night. So maybe you're just done with things at, let's say, 7 p.m. You just block that time for you and your partner, 7 until you go to sleep. And so in that, you can choose to schedule a dinner or some activity, but if you don't want to, it doesn't matter because that's still your time. So maybe you're at home, you get the opportunity to kind of flow with that scheduled time where you can still be asking these types of questions that we're going to go into.
Maybe it's even going on a walk. It's going for a bike ride. Like you and I love it when we're like, hey, let's get on our beach cruisers and go for a walk. So it's all about the intentional space and saying, we're blocking this time regardless of whether we're in the home, outside the home, for meaningful conversation. Now with that, shall we get to the questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So we provided 6 questions. Of course, there are infinitely more questions you could ask each other, but this is 6 to get started with. All right. And we gave you a couple warm-up ones because I know for some of you, you're thinking, how am I going to get my partner on board with some of these deeper questions? So here's a couple warm-up. All right. The first one could be, hey, what was the best part of your week? Just start there instead of how was your day or how was your week, which again, the standard question or answer to that question is fine. Okay. But if you said, what was the best part of your week? Your partner now goes into their memory, thinks about it. Wow, yeah, what did I do this week? What did I enjoy? Oh, you know what? I haven't thought about it, but I had a great time Tuesday night at my volleyball game with the guys. Like that was really, cool for me. And you know what? I didn't even think about that. So then you can follow up with them. Why was that the best part of your week? Tell me more about what did you enjoy about that so much? I want to know. And that allows you again to get deeper into why your partner cares about things. And you may hear things from them that you're like, wow, you never say that out loud. Mm-hmm. You might say that to yourself in your mind, but I love hearing that from you out loud.
Yeah. One of the reasons this is also powerful is because, and look, I'm not a victim, but I haven't been doing a great job of this. How often do we only focus on the things that didn't go the way that we wanted to? Mm-hmm. And this has been proven, right? You could have 9 great things happen and 1 quote unquote bad one. And then which one do we all focus on? Yeah. The bad one. All right. So let's say it's even 50-50, but either way, we as humans don't seem, and maybe this is just me.
No,
maybe
I think
literally I'm the only person that's doing this, but it's easy just to focus on those areas that things didn't go the way we wanted it to, rather than look at all the great things that did happen, right? I just thought of this from another place, that attitude of gratitude. Mm-hmm. And that takes just looking back and saying, what do I appreciate? What did go well? And just focusing more on those.
Exactly.
And so by your partner asking you a question like that, you actually start to think back and you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? This week was actually really great. Mm-hmm. I was focusing on these things that I didn't like about it, but thanks for asking that question because I thought of these 3 things that were really excellent.
Yeah, great point. Second question that could also be considered a warm-up would be, was anything particularly challenging for you this week, either physically, emotionally, or mentally? Mm-hmm. And by asking your partner that question, you also might be hearing things that you don't realize are challenging for them. Maybe they don't express it a lot, or maybe they've actually been internalizing it. They haven't even been giving themselves the chance to reflect on it. And so you're, finding out what's going on that feels challenging. And then once they share, like, oh, maybe it was work, or maybe it was something that was going on with the kids, then you can go, okay, how would you have preferred that went? And that's also a great question for them because they might not have thought about that either. And you could be like, that's an interesting question. I wish that I would have done blank. Or I wish that I would have had the opportunity to do this. And again, that's just a bonding moment to really look at what's been challenging, but also how would you have preferred it to go? And that's one of the beautiful things about these strong relationships, like with your partner, is you can talk to each other about, is there anything you would have done differently? Would you have preferred that something else happened? It's just a great moment.
Well, it starts the partner to be able to access more creative ideas, or just even a creative side of the brain. Actually, going back to the argument hangover, when we talk about conflicts and we talk about that they're not inherently good or bad, and actually they have the ability to be very good. It's just how you go about it, right? And the reason that is, anything that is challenging in your life, not just your relationship, have two sides to it. When a challenge happens, there's why it seems challenging to you, because you had an idea or an expectation it was supposed to go one way and it didn't. So it's in contrast to how you thought it should go or the outcome that you did want. So you focus on the part that you don't want. But what is always there, Jocelyn?
What you do want.
There's always what you do want. Because you wouldn't be upset if you didn't have an already set objective or goal, a positive outcome that you wanted.
Exactly.
I really want people to get that. You're never upset unless you have a certain level of expectation and it goes unmet. But we only focus on the negative side. Switch it. Think, why would this be a challenge to me? And then think, well, what was it that I did want out of this? And all of a sudden, a challenge or a conflict becomes the opportunity to create, to be resourceful, to innovate.
Yes.
And not just in business, but obviously innovate in your own life, in your own relationship, in your own conversations. And that's why I think this is a really good question as well.
Yeah, that is great. I love that you added that. So now going to a third question that you could ask each other is there anything that would have made you feel more supported this week?
Ooh.
And this is powerful because we can assume so often that our partner is just good. Because again, maybe they're not as expressive, or they seem to be a very strong partner. One thing I've been working on personally, because people can perceive me as always like having it handled, super strong. And there are times like I need support. As we're preparing for baby, there are certain things that I just don't feel I have the capacity for. And so I've been making more requests. Hey, could you help me with this? Hey, could you help me with this? And that's been huge for me, but it takes me practice. And that's might be how your partner is. They might not be great at saying, hey, I need this support. And so by asking them, is there anything that would have made you feel more supported this week? Number one, you'll learn about them. And then two, you can also start to anticipate that for the next week. Like, wow, maybe I didn't think about, how hard it's been at work for them. And maybe I never asked them if I could help, pack a snack for them or, to send them an encouraging text. And I never asked them. I just assumed they were good. And you don't want to make assumptions about your partner.
I want to ask, is there any potential tripping hazard here on the side of the question asker?
I don't know. I guess does something come to mind for you?
Yeah, I was just saying if you were there with it. There is a possibility. So if you use this question, you have to set yourself up to listen to the answer non-defensively and not make it about you. Because there is a potential that when you say, is there anything that would have made you feel more supported this week? It is possible for the partner to say, I wish you would have done this instead. So there's a potential tripping hazard in that they may share something that could trigger you. But remember, these are very open-ended, curious, getting to know more about your partner. So don't end up making this about you and then getting upset by, well, what do you mean? I did that for you. Or you didn't say that. How can you be upset about that? No, this is a very open discussion about more understanding.
That is so good that you brought that up. I think a lot of people would not be prepared for that. And I'm really glad you said that.
I want to set you up for success here.
Yes, absolutely. Going to a fourth question. Now for this one, you want to pick an area that you know is like going on in either their life individually or your life as a couple, right? So is that Like for us, it's getting ready for parenthood. Maybe your partner just started a new job. Maybe they just enrolled in school. Maybe they're really focusing on their health and fitness. So pick something that you know is prevalent in their life. Okay, pick that area. Then you would say something like, hey, regarding blank, again, fill in that with parenting, school, fitness. Is there anything interesting you've thought about or learned this week?
Yeah.
And this is great because, again, it's showing that you care about what's important to them. So maybe they've been super passionate about, volleyball, but you've not been showing an interest. And you've kind of just been a little bit maybe resentful that they go and they play volleyball with friends. I'm just making up volleyball, but I know some people have those hobbies, or maybe it's biking. They've gotten really into biking, or they've gotten really into arts. And you aren't asking them how it's going, or you're not asking them, is there anything you've thought about? This has been really, there was a moment last week, you guys, where I felt truly like when people talk about romance, I felt that with you. And we were literally, it was a morning and we were on the couch and in our basically Lululemon outfit, right? So we're not dressed up for a date. But you and I were talking about what we're reflecting on with parenting, like getting ready for that and the identity shifts that we're going through. And we were just talking about, what's been your internal dialogue about it? Mm-hmm. What have you been thinking about? What have you been learning in that book that you've been reading? And because we were so present with each other and we were really learning about what's coming up for each other, it felt so romantic. And there weren't, the whole typical things of the roses and the dressing up and the being outside. We were just really learning about each other.
Yeah, this is great. It made me think of something. So I'm going to give a shout out to some friends of ours that I know listen. So shout out to Heather and Lance here in Arizona. We just reconnected with them after moving back. We got coffee the other day. And this isn't what they were saying, but it was that conversation made me think of this, right? So as partners, there might be aspects of your partner's life that you are either not knowledgeable in or you're not that interested in. And sometimes that can keep you from asking about it. And even though that's an area that your partner really likes. Mm-hmm. So I thought about, and again, this isn't necessarily going on for them, but Heather and Lance was telling me about how he's built 4 motorcycles. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that. I'm like, oh, wow. And he had the pictures. I could tell he was super passionate about this, right? So just thinking through it, maybe as a partner, even if you're not into motorcycles, say, hey, what did you do on the bike this week? Mm-hmm. And maybe you just know the term engine. Say, so what type of engine is that? You don't have to actually know anything, but that can be a conversation starter where they may go on for a bit because it's an area that they love.
Exactly.
I also thought about this on a little other offshoot. Maybe you're with a partner that likes to play video games. And there's a couple of people that we know that would fall into this. And that's typically an area that one partner is like, that's what they do on their own. I got no idea about that. Sometimes you play a little bit too much. But imagine that your partner actually asked you about, so, hey, how far did you get in your game? Or how's that game going for you?
Or did you learn anything new, right? That's cool. Again, it's about showing that interest. And
did you level up?
Did you level up? And, it might be starting up the conversation, warming up, right? Of course, you want to get into sometimes some deeper things. It might not feel like talking about video games or talking about the motorcycles. But again, if you're focusing not just on what they're doing, but how they feel,
there you go.
That's the emotional connection piece. And if it brings your partner joy, or if it's, brings out their childlike curiosity, you want to tap into that. You want to know that about them. That's, again, going to have them feel like, wow, my partner cares about, these things that I care about and how they make me feel.
Yeah.
So that's really a big piece of that emotional connection.
Let's go into question number 5 here. And these are not sequential. These are not, you don't have to ask these in order. So these can be done in any order. Are there any bucket list items or let's say dreams or goals that you'd like to prioritize in the next year?
And this is really a great question too, because we can again be in that management mode of just like errands and did you get this and how's work going? And so if you can sit together and dream together, talk about, these bucket list items, it gives you both something to aspire for, to get excited about, and it might be a great moment for you and your partner to reprioritize things and go, wow, we have been in such management mode that we've set aside these dreams that both of us have. Mm-hmm. So this is a question I would for sure bring up together.
This is interesting because Similarly, I think it was question 1, I think I brought this up. But for some partners, we don't really give our time to think about what was my experience or what is my experience. So obviously that's sort of a barrier to sharing more deeply with your partner. And similarly with this one, I think I have not been doing as good of a job. I don't necessarily really think about what types of experiences do I really want to have? Like, what are those dream type things? I'll give you an example. So you're obviously setting up your baby shower for October 9th. So then you invited me into having all the men get together for some activities during that time. And I really struggled to think about what activities we could do. Like, I felt so limited. I mean, for me, I like ATVing and like golf. That was basically as far as I could get. Both those activities were not ones, I mean, they're fun, certainly, but I wanted to be able to connect more. If you like bowl or golf, it's like you're really only talking to 1 or 2 people. You don't really connect as a group. So honestly, it took me a number of weeks even to come up with almost anything. And I thought how interesting that was, that I must not be giving myself the space to really clearly think about things like bucket lists or dreams or like even goals around activities that, are kind of aspirational.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that I couldn't really come up with anything. And I have a few things now, just so you don't feel like, what's Aaron doing?
Yeah, exactly. You have come up with some things. And I love that you're saying that, because that even makes me think about, with a kiddo joining our family, that we could talk about what are some bucket list things we'd want to do with our new family member. So that'd
I've
be
got
a
some
fun
of those,
conversation. Okay, good. Well then, all right, look, now you and I have some
that's
fun
true.
conversations to have. Let's go to the 6th question that you could ask each other, which is, what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself in the last couple of weeks?
I will say, I would have this one be later.
Exactly.
On,
It's definitely
right?
not
We
a
did some
warm-up.
warm-ups. We said these are not linear, but for this question, once you really have the experience and the juices flowing and the ideas,
You're
you're really connected, then I would come in with this question.
Exactly. And it's a great question to ask, because, it is a good moment for your partner to reflect. Yeah, what have I been learning about myself? But also, you might be assuming that your partner is never, reflecting. Maybe you are focusing on your relationship, and you might just assume like, oh, I'm the only one that cares about this stuff, and I'm the only one that's working on change, when there's a lot of times that when we're talking with a couple, one of them will share like, yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I'm showing up in this area. And the other partner's like, really? You never tell me that.
Oh, yeah.
I would never know that you're reflecting on that. And that means so much to me, because it shows me you are paying attention to what I'm saying. And this is big too, I'm remembering for us, because I'll share with you different things that, I'd love to see shifted or expanded in our relationship. You and I are very much checking in on our relationship often, and sometimes you internalize that and you'll become very reflective, and I wouldn't know that you are. And so it's nice when we are having these meaningful conversations and you'll be like, yeah, I've actually been really thinking about what you said, and I've been noticing that behavior in myself, etc. And I'm like, wow, okay, so you are reflecting on it. That's so good to know.
Well, I want to share 3 things, because it's not just that we are withholding it. And because I say we, because the first thing is reserve partners. So reserve partners, number 1, are internalizing things. So we're not, I'm saying we like defending ourselves
It's a
here, but
club.
us, it's the club, the reserve partner club. We do take that additional time to reflect. And sometimes that takes a while. And so, number 1, reserve partners, you're going to take some time to reflect on that, and then not having quite that assertive dimension, you might not think to bring that back up. Which brings me to the second thing. When you are busy and you have a lot of activity going on, it doesn't seem like it fits into the conversation, because we do get into such management and sharing about activities and schedules to where it doesn't seem like the right time. So if we're moving around, it's like, hey, by the way, last week when I shared what I was reflecting on in my own journey and my emotional trigger and how I'm interrupting that behavior. No, see, you're not going to go that deep when you're, mixing food, or it just seems
or
like
asking, how was your day?
Yeah. It doesn't seem like there's enough time.
Yeah.
And so, or that it's going to be some sort of like interruption.
Yeah.
So I'd say that, plus also I think the third piece was maybe just that it takes some time to reflect. Sometimes I don't get the lesson a day or a week. I might come back to it, later in my morning meditations. So we don't always get an answer right away. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to put that out there because maybe for other partners, like, oh, I don't know where my partner's at with this. This is why this is a good question. So especially if you have the blocked off time to say, yeah, what is the biggest thing you've learned about yourself recently? That's now a great time for us to share.
Exactly. Well said.
I keep saying us. It's funny.
Yeah, the club.
The reserve group club.
You should make like a Facebook group that's like all reserved partners. Okay, one bonus one. Is there anything I can do to be an even better partner for you? And this is one that you could ask weekly. You want to check in, and this is a great opportunity. And this would also be a great question in your family meeting. I mean, I am amazed. We still get messages every day about, I loved your family meeting episode and how to have that. So make sure you go and listen to that episode on how to have a family meeting and the whole structure for it. And that's a great time to bring this question up. But even outside of that, if you're on a date, ask each other, is there anything I can do to be an even better partner for you? Is a great question. Mm-hmm. Now, with all of, go ahead.
Well, once again, I just want to say this is like one of the last questions. Unless you already have your love account full, obviously, if you're unfamiliar with that term, either in the book or maybe there's another podcast episode about it. But essentially, I feel like the love account needs to be at a certain level for this question to really connect you. Once again, because if it's lower, it can feel like maybe a criticism. Honestly, it'll feel internally first that maybe there's a place that you're failing or not doing good enough, but that's going to be expressed in probably some level of defensiveness or justification. So either you want the love tank to be high when bringing this question up, which I think if you're really taking the time together to ask all these other questions within this period of time, I feel like the love account will have had enough deposits where this question is going to be a lot more meaningful and like future focused than kind of a defensive stance.
Yeah, great point. Now, again, these are just a few of the questions that we could have listed, but start somewhere. And remember that it is about setting intentional space and time for meaningful conversations, for realizing that 80%, 90% of your life is about, hey, do we have this right? And where are the kids going? And have you gotten this at the grocery store? And so you need time that's not about management. You're having an important conversation. You're connecting emotionally. And remember, like we said, the quality of your conversation and really the depth of your emotional connection comes from the questions you're asking each other. So ask some of these great questions. Use some of the warm-up ones if your partner is maybe a little unfamiliar with some of these deeper conversations. And let us know how it's going. Tell us if you have, an evening together alone, you do a date night and you ask these. And if you're like, wow, we connected so much, tell us. We want to receive an Instagram message, and make sure you share with your community about the podcast. There are a lot of couples that are looking for resources and they may not know. So, reach out to a friend of yours that recently got married or is going through a rough patch. Send them the podcast episode to spread the love. And like Erin said, if you haven't read The Argument Hangover, make sure you grab your copy and take advantage of those extra goodies and bonuses at theargumenthangover.com. And if I can just request as like a baby shower gift from you all, if you, quote unquote, like us at all, I'm just going to consider this a gift from you. Would you please, if you've read any part or all of The Argument Hangover and you haven't written a review yet on the platform where you purchased it, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc., would you please take 15 seconds to go write a review? That's literally the fuel for our business is reviews. And that would be what I'd consider a baby shower gift from you all if you even want to give one to us. But that would truly mean so much. And with that, everyone, we always love connecting with you, hearing from you about the podcast, and we will talk to you on the next episode.